thing I've learned in all these years of doing this internet reviewer racket, it's that you definitely shouldn't judge someone just on their single worst work, especially if it was in their early days. Tom Hanks will go down as one of the greatest and most beloved Hollywood stars of any time period, having starred in many Oscar-worthy films. But his earliest work in the 80s, some of it may not be so fondly remembered. Then there's someone like David Wise, who helped create a global phenomenon in the first cartoon that made the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles mainstream. And he also wrote the Battletoads cartoon. Eugene Levy is a great creative comedic talent, when he was on something like SCTV or in a movie role that plays to his strengths. But let's just say I don't think anyone will be calling on him to adapt a video game anytime soon. Which brings us to today's subject, one of the earliest works of one of my favorite voice actors of all time. Lorenzo Music was a talent that can never be replaced, with one of the most recognizable voices in animation history. While he did have a long resume of voiceover roles like Tummy Gummy in Disney's The Gummy Bears and Venkman on The Real Ghostbusters, just about everyone will forever recognize him as the voice of the world's most favorite fat cat, Garfield. However, many may not know that Music actually got his first big break in TV as a behind-the-scenes producer with Mary Tyler Moore's production company. In fact, he got his very first voice role simply because the other producers thought it was such a throwaway part that casting a full-time actor wasn't needed. That, of course, was the role of Carleton the Doorman on the Mary Tyler Moore spin-off Rhoda.
Carleton?
Hello, this is Carleton, your doorman.
Yeah, Carleton, what's the idea of letting Lenny in when I wasn't here?
But he said he loved you. We don't get many of those.
Music's dry, lethargic tone turned out to be perfect for the eternally stoned and inattentive character whose face we never saw on the series. And it left viewers always waiting to hear those 6 words on every episode. Carleton became such a beloved character that less than 2 years after Rhoda went off the air, MTM Productions looked to create a spin-off of the spin-off and give Carleton his own series. Did I mention it would be an animated series? And one that bombed horribly, as only the pilot episode aired in May of 1980 and was never picked up for a full series. But fortunately, thanks to people on the internet always willing to dig up long-buried material, we can finally find out what that was. This is the pilot episode for Carleton, your doorman. We open with our title character mistreating his cat. Knowing who Lorenzo will become most famous for voicing, there is really some sad irony in this. At any rate, this is where we at long last finally get to see Carleton full in person.
Hello, this is Carleton, your doorman.
And he's a Dr. Johnny Fever look-alike. Didn't see that coming. So after we're briefly introduced to Carleton's dumpster-diving mother, who seems to just be there for throwaway gags and nothing else, we then meet the real antagonist, Carleton's pushy boss, who immediately reminds me of the slimy-head lawyer from Gary the Rat. What a great start we're off to!
You're an hour late again, Carleton. And this time you're gonna make up for it by working late tonight.
And no, just to get this out of the way, we never see Rhoda or her mother or her sister or any of the Morgensterns in this show. Because why would we want to see characters we actually enjoyed? It's almost like Valerie Harper knew not to come anywhere close to this mess. So it looks like Carleton's job involves not just greeting people at the front door of the building, but sorting everyone's mail, parking their cars, and walking their pets everywhere.
I left it right out in the open where you could find it this time, Mr. Gleason.
Where?
Right around the corner on 83rd Street.
83rd? You you idiot. That's a tollway zone.
Hey, don't come down on me. I make the parking rules.
Carlton, listen carefully. I'm late for an appointment. Please tell me where I can find my wife's car.
No sweat. Parked right in front of yours.
Carlton, I'm gonna kill you.
Look, I admit I didn't grow up in the big city in the 70s, so was this what all doormen had to do? Be the full-time servant for every resident? Who am I talking to? Most of my audience wasn't alive when the Berlin Wall came down. Okay, for what it's worth, it's only the boss who we know for sure makes Carleton walk the family dog. Much to Carleton's dismay, because that also means dealing with the boss's wife, who is less than subtle about her desire to philander around with Carleton. So, does Carleton, a known skirt chaser even back on Rhoda's show, reject this one's advances because he actually isn't attracted to her, or because he fears his boss will have him rooming with Jimmy Hoffa below Giant Stadium if they got caught? I'm guessing the answer is yes. I will say one thing about Lorenzo Music's performance. It's very much like Garfield. Carleton in this show comes off as lazy, sarcastic, beaten down by the dregs of life. His appearance even looks a bit like if a cat was transformed into a human. Heck, given that this came out 2 years after Garfield premiered in comic strips, and 3 years before Here Comes Garfield premiered, one might even think that Jim Davis saw this and decided, yeah, that's the guy to play my character right there. Unfortunately, this just isn't a setting that really works for that persona. And it may be because of the other characters. Garfield's sloth was balanced out by the energy of other characters like John and Odie. Here, almost everyone comes off just as slow and morbid as Carleton, and so the whole thing feels slow and dreary, which isn't what you want for what is still supposed to be a comedy. A lot of times, character performance can make up for low animation quality, but it just doesn't happen here. As far as that animation goes, it took me a while to figure out exactly what I was going to say, because it reminded me of something, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And then it hit me. It's almost like the animation from many of the old classic Sesame Street shorts. Given how this show is basically trying to be an adult comedy in the 70s, that's more than a bit creepy. So Carleton takes out the dog and uses the time to go after women he actually does like. The feeling is not mutual, and given that a dog is usually supposed to be a chick magnet, that really tells you something about Carleton.
Why don't we go over to my place and get out of these wet clothes and into some dry sherry? Okay, we don't have to drink.
Okay, so he's a mix of both Garfield and John. Take notes, Tom Hughie. And then this happens.
You met my mom?
Because, yeah, everyone knows if there's one can't-fail attempt at comedy, it's kill the dog. So now Carleton has to try and find a replacement for Dead Doggo. Sadly, none of them at the pound are what he's looking for, much to the dismay of many of the dogs who try because, well, you know why they want out of there.
Mean kennel release. What the heck?
Oh yeah, this was definitely the inspiration for Here Comes Garfield. The pet shop can't help him either, because while there is one dog that looks like the deceased, he's not the right size. What, he's not gonna just try and tell his boss that his dog shrunk in the wash? Are we even trying for comedy here? I guess not, because next we get this painfully bad monologue from Carleton about how he got his job to begin with, as he fears it's all over for him, before he gets his last-ditch idea. Disguise his cat to look like the dog. Okay, now I'm suspecting Lorenzo took the Garfield role just to assuage his guilt for how this character was abusive to the feline race as a whole. Naturally, the charade doesn't work, and Carleton has to come clean. The wife wants Carleton fired, and maybe worse. What is the boss's reaction?
It's not gonna be the same around here without him. It's gonna be great. I never liked that dog.
Really?
Yeah, really. He barked all the time. He bit the neighbors. And did you get a look at that rug in there?
Then you're not mad?
Do I look mad? And just to prove there's no hard feelings, here's the $3 I owe you for walking.
And so, it's the beginning of a beautiful friendship between the two. Probably not. Or we'll never know since this pilot went nowhere.
Hey, don't sweat it. 2 months, you'll be back to normal. Until then, I wouldn't plan on any heavy dates.
So yeah, that's Carleton, your doorman. How was it? About as bad as an eternity of Mondays. This thing was just painfully boring. The pacing is terrible, the plot has as minimal a conflict as you can get, which is really bad for a first episode, and there's just no effort or energy put in by anyone except maybe Lorenzo Music, and that just shows why someone like Carleton shouldn't be the main character. Making the comic relief the central focus rarely works, even if you make it for a fast-paced slapstick show, and that's not even what's tried here. This is definitely a prime example of why artists should never be judged on their early work. Not only was Lorenzo Music a writer of this show, in addition to it being his first animated voice role, but the directors were Fred Wolf and Charles Swenson. Yes! As in the founders of Murakami Wolf Swenson, the producers of the first Ninja Turtles cartoon. Thankfully, this didn't kill off Lorenzo's acting aspirations, and he soon after landed that one role that launched his voice into one we'll forever remember. So, keep that in mind, everybody. Just because someone in his early years made something that was cringe-inducing doesn't mean things can't get better. You mean like you and your regenerated adolescent Kung Fu Felines comic? I told you to bury that lone copy in the Australian outback! See you next time on TV Trash.